If I were fierce and bald and short of breath, I'd be with scarlet majors at the base and speed glum heroes up the line to death. Those famous words written by Siegfried Sassoon in 1917 pretty well summed up the situation in the Great War. But of course you can go back further than that, can't you? You can go back to, let's say, very apposite at the moment, the Crimean War in the 1850s. And that spawned jingoism. That's when jingoism was invented by the song, the music hall song, by Jingo, we don't want to fight, but if we do, we've got the ships, we've got the men, we've got the money too. So it's jingoism which has gone into the lexicon, global lexicon of ignorant and aggressive militarism. And we can't seem to shake it off, can we? We can't seem to shake it off. We've got it all the time. The interference, the war with Russia in the 1850s achieved very little. It was extremely expensive. It cost many thousands of lives, mainly from disease. It was an appalling situation. How did we ever get involved? Well, we got involved because of stupid politicians and saloon bar rhetoric. And we're getting the same thing again today, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And then, of course, Kipling quoted, when you've finished singing Rule Britannia and God Save the Queen, and you finished killing Kruger with your mouth, that was the prelude, as it were, to the South African War, the great disastrous South African War that was the beginning of the decline of the British Empire, an unnecessary and stupid and expensive war which had no moral foundation whatsoever. And then, of course, we had the involvement in the European War in 1914, which cost us 1 million British Empire war dead, the best of our youth, and the final demise of the British Empire. Because we involved ourselves in matters which don't concern us. Our defence, our navy and our army and our air force are for the defence of the realm. They're not for military adventurism all over the globe. And of course, at least we're not as bad as the Americans, who have somewhere in the region of 200,000 overseas personnel and 800 overseas bases interfering everywhere. And I would ask you to look at what good comes of it. The Americans haven't fought a successful war since Korea. We've had Vietnam, we've had Libya, we've had Iraq, we've had Afghanistan. The whole thing's been an absolute bloody shambles, hasn't it? Expensive, and who goes and gets killed? It's young people, young men go and get killed, while the people who perpetrate these wars sit comfortably at home, and I suppose it was ever thus. And now we have this situation in the Ukraine. Now, in 2004, the legitimate government of the Ukraine was overturned by the Americans in their quest for regime change, which we've seen so much of since the war. It was the same in Syria, same in Horn of Africa. We've seen Libya. We've seen so much of it. No good ever comes of it. Now we are involving ourselves, as we always do in Britain, as lackeys of the Americans by sending weapons and so forth, so on and so forth, and some personnel to Ukraine to support an illegitimate government in the Ukraine. This can't conceivably have anything to do with us here in Britain, who is a regional power. We're a regional power. We're not a global power anymore. Those days have long gone. But the point I'm going to make here is the sheer danger of this. Danger with a war with Russia. Nobody ever wins a war with Russia. You can't. It's vast. Least of all on their own doorstep. We can't go on and on and on like this to justify the industrial military complex which has £1 trillion a year budget in the United States. This is about money. This is about budgets. This is building up to be possibly a huge mistake. Now, I know most people don't know where the Ukraine is. Certainly journalists don't know whether it's near Uttoxeter or Uruguay or wherever it can be. And they never bother to read a history book. And if they knew something about the history of Russia and the Soviet Union and these matters in that department, in that area of the world, they'd start seeing things from a different perspective, but they don't know. It's all gung-ho, it's jingoism. And it's going to lead us down a very dicey path, a very expensive path. And if we're not careful, it'll go from a saber-rattling war into a shooting war. Nothing could be more dangerous globally. Nobody ever wins a war. Very few wars are fought have any benefit to the victor or the loser. It doesn't matter. There is almost no benefit ever to war. Sometimes you have to fight a war when your own country is invaded. Then you have to fight. And the Falklands was a just war. It was invaded by a bunch of fascist dictators, and it had the Union Jack flying over it. There had to be a war. You have to fight your corner. I'm not a pacifist. But we can't go on getting involved in other people's wars attached to the shirt tails of the American expansionist military powers in Washington and the neocons. So if you're cheering on in the pub the possibility of war on behalf of the Ukraine with Russia or our involvement in it, I counsel you to step back, because your forebears were doing the same thing in the 1850s and no good came of it. In 1899 in South Africa, no good came of it. And 1914, no good came of it. So enjoy your pint in your pub, but shut your rattle. Stop pushing it along, because you don't understand it and it's none of your business. Well, greetings to you. As you know, social media was a wonderful invention so that we could all communicate with each other and share our views and share views that aren't necessarily in line with the establishment, the global establishment, which is run mainly by banks and big pharma. So I've been doing my best to do that, but I am increasingly being shadow banned or taken down, and so are many others. So beware of that, and I will be tagging anything I do in the future with various sources and various channels so that you will know, well, I've been censored from this, but I've been censored, but you can find it somewhere else. So the whole thing can continue. And I think some of these new channels, which aren't owned by the establishment or influenced by the establishment, banks and big pharma and all the rest, you'll be able to follow the facts. And that doesn't mean fact checkers, of course, which are owned by the establishment. So I just thought I'd give you the heads up on that. And thank you for your sponsorship and your support. I thank you for it. Without you and the information that sometimes you people send me, I couldn't continue. Thank you again. As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.